I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for March 11th, 2020. And I think we'll get to additions to the agenda. First item is privilege of the floor. Is there anybody who wishes to address the IDA? Okay. I note we have a new person attending. This is Elizabeth May, right? Kathy May, close. Would you like to come up and talk to us for a minute? Introduce yourself.
Sure. This is actually my son got here.
Oh, were you here last time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
So if you could go to one of these, yeah.
Why don't you sit in the chair right there and you can use the microphone?
So this is Kathy May. She's TCAD's new Director of Workforce Services, and I just thought I would bring her down and introduce her. I know I've talked about this position for about a year now, spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders about how TCAD could add value to the workforce system, and Kathy's finally here. So I just wanted everyone to get acquainted with Kathy and know that she's on board, and she's meeting with stakeholders, she's meeting with companies, she's doing lots of research on workforce. She's doing all the right things so far.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And there's some physical work being done at the offices that sort of reflects the combined approach and the expansion. It's really cool. So, okay. Additions to the agenda. That we have one new item, you said, Heather?
Yes, we have a request from one of the Dryden Solar projects for an amendment to their documents.
And without objection, John?
Can I ask that we just get a brief, maybe a few sentences about the presentation the few of us saw up at Southfield Business Campus, and maybe talk a little bit about next steps? I'm really excited about
You're talking about the accelerator?
Yeah.
We're going to spend some time on that.
Really cool stuff. Okay,
Yeah, I was going to talk about it in my staff report, but we could certainly move it as an addition to the agenda.
I mean, I'd love to just have a little conversation about next steps and
Yeah.
see if we can push that thing forward.
We're planning
really
on it.
Cool. So.
Yes, I want to hear about it. I'd ask if we could just address this Dryden Solar amendment to the property description. And Heather, maybe you could just describe what they want changed.
Would you like me to?
Sure.
Apologies. We were contacted literally this morning that the legal description that is subject to the IDA lease and leaseback is inaccurate, which requires that it's a simple easement apparently that goes through the property, so we have to amend the existing documents to replace the legal description so that it's accurate. They have a financial closing in the coming weeks, and their lenders requiring that it be done. I spoke with Heather this morning and the developer, and they requested that it be presented to the board today for approval. A ministerial act.
Do I have a motion to make that change? John moves. Do I have a second? Laura, thank you. Any questions, further comment on that? John?
I assume this is immaterial. You said it's just there's an easement somewhere that wasn't correctly described.
I don't have all the details. It is immaterial as to the IDA. It's just the documents are inaccurate based upon the description they originally provided to us. What I will do is, assuming the board approves this, I will put together a more formal resolution for the record.
So I had a brief conversation with Richard Chun this morning. This is a 1.3 megawatt solar facility, about 13 or 14 acres. And there was Dryden 1 and Dryden 2. They're parcels that are next to one another, or projects. And they amended their lease agreement to allow for an easement through Dryden 2 for road access to Dryden 1, because it would have been landlocked otherwise. So it was just a minor change, and with the lease, because that easement happened, they added a little bit more so that it would be the same acreage that was being leased for the solar project. Really minor stuff.
Okay. All right, ready to vote? All those in favor? All right, great. Moving on to business, I wanted to welcome our almost new member, Ann Corman, will be appointed to the IDA. I invited her to attend today and to participate in discussions, but as a non-voting party. But we're looking forward to your input.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have appointment of administrative director. Okay. This is the, I assume, annual.
As a best practice, I'm asking the IDA and the Development Corporation to formally appoint an administrative director every year as a result of when the ABO came and audited us one year, they couldn't find that the IDA had ever appointed Michael Stamm as administrative director back in 1985. So we're just going to cross our T's and dot our I's.
Do I have a motion to nominate Heather?
I would like to nominate Heather McDaniel to be our director.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. Laura seconds. Any questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay. And
Thank you for your support.
appointment of 2020 board officers. And if you could just review who those are, Heather?
Yes, so the board officers as recommended are Rich John, which is actually designated by the chair of the legislature. You don't need to approve him. The vice chair being Martha Robertson and the secretary/treasurer being Jennifer Tavares.
I have a motion. Laura moves, John seconds. All those in favor? Great, okay. And then we have 3 committees of the IDA, and we want to approve those for the coming year. And that's finance and audit, energy, or not energy, housing, and governance.
And the Energy Committee is being sunset because
Right.
it's now done.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, and we're proposing just keeping the committees the same. We did do an orientation with Ann Corman yesterday, and if she determines that she wants to join one of those committees, we'll then add her to that committee later.
Seems like she might belong on our housing committee.
Be glad to, but I'll be interested in learning more about them.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the committees? John moves, Martha seconds. All those in favor? All right, cruising through. Approval of 2019 audit upon the recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee. And I apologize, I got called out of town, so I did not attend that meeting. But Heather, do you want to report on the Finance and Audit Committee?
The Finance and Audit Committee met and went through the draft audit and recommended approval of the audit subject to the final project numbers. In the back of the financial report, there's always a list of all the projects and all of their metrics for the year. We're still gathering that data. However, there's a requirement that the audit be approved and then that we subsequently give staff the approval to submit all that data online into the Paris system by the end of the month. I think all my IDA counterparts, we all talk about this and say, well, the best way to do that is to say we're going to approve it pending, final documentation delivery. The auditors will be here in April to present the full financial reports. But all of the financial dealings of the organization, all of those numbers have been finalized, and the audit committee reviewed it and was absolutely fine with that. So they're recommending that this body approve the financial report, the full audit of the IDA.
Do I have a motion? Mike moves, Martha seconds. Any questions, comments, discussion? Martha?
So Leslie and Evan will be here in April, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Anything further? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Unanimous? All right, and then, of course, we have the issue of having to submit the Paris information immediately, right, or almost immediately.
The end of the month. This is Be Nice to Ina month. She's
And so
very busy. Be extra nice to Ina this month.
we need to approve submission of the Paris, the audit information into the Paris system, which is happening now. Do I have a motion to that effect? John moves, Martha seconds. Anybody have questions about this? And we talked about this yesterday, just 2 days ago now? Yesterday. Yeah, just how it has to happen out of order. So, all right, anything further? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Great, okay. All right, energy policy. Why don't we get this on the floor? This is, you should have the draft dated March 4th, 2020 in front of you. Could I get a motion for consideration on the floor? Martha moves, John seconds. Okay, Heather, do you want to open up with this?
So Ina gave everybody a new copy. I had Nick Goldsmith read it from the city, and he provided some minor editorial changes, nothing substantive. But this policy is essentially what was presented in the energy policy study update from Tatum Engineering. In December, they were here, November, December, and presented our goals for updating the energy incentive and a recommended policy. I've cleaned up some of the language a little bit, but it's essentially what Ian had presented in the appendix of his document. And then again, Nick Goldsmith made some minor changes. So I'm presenting this for your consideration as a new policy at the IDA today.
All right. Questions, comments? Martha?
Well, I'm trying to absorb the differences between what was in the packet and what we just got. So if you would go through that, so I know.
This is red line, it seems like it's mostly just like minor graphic.
It's,
Okay, but are these links? Is this, these are?
no, this
red
is just
line?
underlined, red, it should have been
Okay.
red, but it printed blue for some reason.
EPA.
So in that paragraph under the bullets where it, about 3/4 of the way down where it says whole building path, I mean, this paragraph says there's essentially two ways to comply, easy path or whole building path. And Nick just added in that last sentence, using the whole building path to make it clear that this was not relevant for the easy path. He added the word ASHRAE standard 90.1 instead of just ASHRAE 90.1. He spelled e-grid and capitalized grid instead of, I mean, it's just minor, nothing was substantive.
All right, but there is a footnote? Is it a footnote on, footnotes on, after
He
major
had these little
innovation?
footnotes, I don't know why these footnotes appeared, because when I first read it, they weren't there, but then they printed there, but I didn't see anything, so I'm taking those out.
They might have been in, if you look in comments in the electronic version.
Yeah, I didn't see any comments.
I mean, those aren't actually reflected in the policy, it's just, it's very. It's a red line issue. It's just a red, yeah.
Okay, so, but my more substantive question is, I don't understand the description, the discussion of gas boiler and gas forced air. Maybe I just, building modeling shall follow, shall follow these standards, with the exception that for the baseline building, space heating shall be a gas boiler or gas forced air, and hot water heating shall be natural gas. So I don't understand.
The baseline is the building against which you're comparing your project. So you're assuming that when you say this project performs this much better than baseline, that's the assumptions that you build into the model.
That's the assumptions that Ian recommended that you use for the modeling.
But that's what you're comparing your project against, right?
Right.
So you say baseline is this carbon output, mine is here, you have to set a standard description for what the building would be
Got it.
if it was not getting better by the improvements you're making.
Okay.
Ann?
Thank you. So I wasn't clear either from reading this, that will there be incentives if there are fossil fuels used in the projects? I mean, there's reference to the Ithaca Green Building Policy that for the 2030 level, saying that the incentive after, at the very last two lines, that applicants for the enhanced energy incentive after January 2025 must comply with the requirements, and that would be fossil fuel.
So you can meet the 2025 requirements still using natural gas for hot water, for space heating if it's, or for cooking if it's not a multifamily building. So just to back up, the enhanced energy incentive is an extra incentive. If you apply for IDA incentives, you get the base incentive, but if you want to go the extra step and comply with the City of Ithaca's 2025 requirement, which is currently projected to be 80% better than code, then you can get the enhanced incentive. So it all goes back to whatever the City of Ithaca's policy says. The 2025 requirement is that you can use the whole building path, and you have to have a certain number of energy points or something, or you can use this easy path, and you have to have 12 points. My understanding is that with the 12 points, if you had a multi-story building and you used air source heat pumps for all of the residential, you could still get away with using natural gas for the, if you had cooking, if you had a restaurant or something like that.
Commercial kitchen.
But the
However,
2030 level
The
is
2030
fossil
level is
fuel-free.
fossil fuel-free. So what we're doing is providing an enhanced incentive for projects that will be one step ahead of what the city's requiring today. We're saying not what the city's requiring today, but what they're requiring in 2025. And then come 2025, we will require what the city's requiring in 2030, which is fossil fuel-free. I will also add that in your packet, you also have changes to our UTEP, our standard policy, that require for any housing facility that you are using air source heat pumps. And there's language in there that Ian gave me. So even for the base incentive, if you're housing, you will have to use heat pumps.
Okay. Martha?
Okay, I just want to clarify. So basically, it's not anything different than what the city and town will be requiring, but moving it up in time?
Yes.
Accelerating it?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're tying all the requirements to their policy, so that if their policy changes 3 years from now, then, you know, our policy will be in tandem with that.
The heat pump requirement, is that in line with the city, or is that an addition? I thought that might be an addition.
That's an addition.
Okay. All right. John?
It occurs to me that actually so towards the end of the 2025, or in late 2024, we won't meaningfully be requiring that people are actually ahead of the curve, because they're going to be phasing into the next set of requirements. They could still apply under the 2025 requirements for a project that wasn't going to complete until 2025 anyway, right? Shouldn't we say that they must be at least some number of years ahead, so that those projects that are in 2024 are then using the next standard rather than using the standard that will become current before the project even finishes?
Well, if I'm still around in 2024 and a project comes to me in October, I'm going to say, you know what, you're going to have to comply with the 2030 standard.
Right, but I mean, if we just set that date to 2023 or something like that, then I think that would make a lot more sense. Right, if we just, that one applicants for energy incentive after January 1st, 2023 or 2024.
How about 2024? Split the difference?
Yeah, I mean, that way, right.
Okay. All right, anything else? Ann?
I just my thought right now is I would feel uncomfortable voting for an extra incentive if a company is using, or a project is using fossil fuels, unless it was absolutely necessary, like a commercial kitchen or some industry or something like that.
I think the upshot of the policy functionally is that it doesn't really make sense for them to use gas except when they have to, which is like a commercial kitchen.
And we may have incidences where, you have an industrial user that has some pretty significant processing needs that, it would be completely cost prohibitive at this point to do fossil fuel free. And so they would not apply for the enhanced energy incentive. They would apply for the regular incentive.
Martha?
I think there's really merit to trying to keep the same requirements as other entities. So whatever if the code, the city's code is X and we want to enhance that or accelerate it, keeping the same code but moving it up, I think is definitely a benefit. So I guess I'm comfortable with this. I do have a question about on packet page, on the next page where you've got a difference between the large non-residential and the large multifamily. The non-residential gets 3 years at 100%. The multifamily gets 2 years at 100%. So, and then definitely less of a benefit. So what was the thinking on that?
That's because Ian had talked about this in terms of his research, that he really felt pretty strongly that if you're doing a multifamily project, that putting in heat pumps was pretty much financially feasible. But for a non-residential project, the prices just are not that feasible yet. So recognizing that, giving a little bit more of an incentive for a non-residential project.
Okay.
He thought that the prices are going to change fairly quickly, but they're not there yet. So we may need to revisit the policy in years to come to address them.
Thanks.
Anything else? Questions, comments? Are we ready to consider approval of this policy? Okay. All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Jennifer?
I'm just going to abstain because I didn't benefit from the whole conversation and then apologize. So
Oh, okay.
you don't need my vote.
Pass? Pass. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I was late, everybody.
That's all right. Okay, this is a pretty important thing we just did, frankly, if I can editorialize for a moment. Chair's report? Oh, I see. TCIDA UTEP policy, update to reflect energy policy. Okay.
I refrained from making lots of changes to the UTEP, which I think our governance committee might want to look at and make some minor modifications to things we don't do anymore. But what I did do is just make modifications to add that we do have this enhanced energy incentive policy, to add the incentive levels, and then I also added language for all projects that come to the IDA. It's on page 11 in your packet. I added in this heat pump requirement that Tatum, again, in their study recommended for all multifamily housing and mixed-use projects that they have to use heat pumps for space heating. And there's some engineering and energy lingo there about what kind of heat pumps and all of that that you can use. So I did add that in there.
Okay. Do we need to take any action regarding this policy?
I would like you to move and approve this.
All right, so do I have a motion to, Laura moves, Mike seconds, all right? Questions, comments on the TCIDA UTEP policy, update to reflect energy policy? No? All right, ready to vote? All those in, oh,
yeah.
okay, Martha?
Curious as to why heat pumps are not required for hot water heating.
The cost. Ian did not recommend that we make that across the board.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, for a lot of different load scenarios, that's not actually the most efficient thing you can do. We use a lot of on-demand electric hot water heaters that are, I mean, it's just a standard electric heating element. But if you're not using it for a lot of the day, not storing the water is actually more efficient.
That's actually an interesting, when you look, that's true per user.
In certain cases, it depends on your load scenario.
But if you are the utility, that freaks you out, because if everybody is on demand,
Yep.
then between 6 and 8:30 in the morning, they have to have capacity for a huge peak, as opposed to storing hot water and people just using it. So it's one of those weird things, so
No doubt.
just wanted to mention it.
Yet one more complication in society. It's-
Yeah.
We're seeing how interconnected we all are, it seems, on an hourly basis with the changes. Okay.
Right.
Anything further? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? Jennifer? Good. Okay, all right. Thank you.
This might even be a bigger thing than the other one. This is great. This is huge.
Okay, Chair's report. I did just want to mention, we had the public hearing for City Harbor and received public comment over at the Ithaca Town Hall. That, you said, is still awaiting, is it the seeker?
Yes.
Okay. So that probably will come before us at our next meeting.
Are we going to hear an update on Caroline at all, or is that just silently waiting patiently?
Heather and I talked about it. I have been in communication with their counsel. I'm not in a position to report or make any recommendations to the board at this point. If you'd like to have a sidebar after the meeting, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Okay. All right, that's my chair's report. Staff report.
Rich and Ann were in my offices yesterday to do an orientation for Ann. I feel like I talked really fast, so if you need, to understand more of the alphabet soup of the IDA, I'm always happy to do that. But at least she got the bare bones and I think up to speed a little bit, so we look forward to having you join the IDA. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about this accelerator presentation that I hosted last week. The Orange County IDA and a gentleman from a company called Galileo Technology came up and gave a presentation about the accelerator work that they're doing down in Orange County. John and Ann were both there. Jamie Johnson from the Steuben County IDA, one of his board members and one of his staff members also came to hear the presentation. Essentially what Galileo does as a consultant for the IDA is develops and runs these community-based business accelerators, and they work with industry and other partners really to increase job opportunities and grow companies in the Orange County area. They're very much community-driven. They've done a number of these accelerators in different townships throughout the county, based really on a community-based process of identifying what the accelerator will do and who it will serve. Accelerators are a little different from incubators in that an accelerator is either a physical or a virtual facility that actually works with existing businesses, not the brilliant guy or gal that has the next greatest idea since sliced bread, but actually have a company and provide resources to help that company grow. Some of the examples of the community-driven accelerators that they have developed in Orange County, one for artisan food manufacturers, one in the fashion industry, since they're so close to New York City, have been teaching sort of sewing skills and adding sewing jobs for one of their particularly low-poverty communities. They have a hemp accelerator. They have one for security technology companies that is very near West Point, trying to promote opportunities for graduates and students at West Point to do internships and then maybe stay in the community when they're done at West Point. They have one for medical device and software companies. So they've really sort of, the IDA has invested in these accelerators as a way of creating businesses, growing businesses, and creating job opportunities. I did say they can be physical or virtual. And essentially the way that Galileo Technology does it is they go in and they'll assess the geography and the demographics in a community, understand what the economic problems are in a community, really do a deep dive on some of the data, and then they'll come in and perform a SWOT analysis with a group of industry stakeholders in your community to identify what cluster their accelerators should focus on. And I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's a really great way to support more business development. Galileo actually does it as a consultant for the Orange County IDA. They've done it for some other counties as well, other entities, not just IDAs, but they'll come in and help you to put together the accelerator, run the accelerator, help bring grants and other resources to the project.
And I think you said they expressed a willingness to come meet with us here,
Yes.
if there was interest.
Yes. I'd love to hear from John and Ann what your thoughts were, but I'd really like to say, hey, I don't think we have anything to lose. For free, they'll come up and do a SWOT and at least do some of the data dive and give some recommendations.
John?
Yeah, I think that this is something that's actually very similar to the kind of work that we've been doing at Urban Core, where we've got, a bunch of like-kind businesses that are co-located and sharing resources. And I think that it's a really powerful model. The companies get a lot out of that sort of commingling and mixing. And, it's happened organically to us, but I think that, there's a lot of power in this model of actually doing the SWOT analysis, which, I don't know if you all heard the price, it is free, and they'll come up and spend, it sounded like most of a day with us and talk through the overall picture of the community. And they're not just looking at like, well, what jobs do you guys need? They're looking at everything. And, they mentioned, that in one of their communities that they were working in, they found that there was a very large cluster of people who are non-English speakers. And, that they realized that there was this huge resource that was, not really, like, basically these people weren't being served. So they and also, they weren't essentially filling an economic need in the community. And so, to be able to say, like, we're not just here to create jobs, but we have identified that, if we create specifically these kinds of jobs and we work in this particular community, we'll have the most community benefit. So I think it's a really cool opportunity, and I would absolutely love to see us do it. Price is right, and there's nothing to lose, and it could be a really huge benefit to the community.
Okay, Martha?
Yeah, that day I was trying to get there, and we had a county meeting before and a county meeting at the end, and so I might have gotten there for 10 minutes, and then Mike said, well, they're finished already. So I would really be interested in hearing from this. What did I miss? How come it's free?
Well, they'll come do the SWOT analysis for free.
Okay.
But then, there's a fee and part of why I thought this would be a good idea to look into this is that we've had this discussion about the IDA's fund balance and finding ways that might be meaningful to actually move the needle on employment and job creation here in the community. So, they talked about it really depends on how much it costs to actually run an accelerator. There is a cost to do it, depending on the cost of the space and the number of companies and the kinds of resources. You could do it for $60,000 $50,000 to $100,000 a year, or you could do it for more than that. I know that the Orange County IDA has some significant funds. They have big industry there, and they're delivering incentives to very large projects on a pretty regular basis. So they're a little more flush with cash than we are, but I think we could still find a way to do something meaningful here.
Ann?
So I was very enthused during and after the presentation. And so I was wondering if, I don't know if we want to ask them to come back to do that presentation again so that we're all on the same page as to what they do. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that, if we could do that virtually, but I think that would be really valuable for the members here. And then the SWOT, it's SWOT, I think so it's not SWAT, the SWOT. But so I would just, some of my thoughts are thinking about like our underserved population and, people that have come, whether it's to the IDA or talk about in the community about, well, we really, they're concerned about the incentives here being given to people who maybe don't need it. But this is a way for them through this organization, I want to say through us, but it'll be us soon when I become a member, but it's a way to give back. So I'm really excited to become a member at this time when we have something like this to consider, because if we can also look at our underserved populations, when we're doing the SWOT, it's a way to help emerging small businesses, which we have a ton of here in this community, a way to help accelerate their growth. John gave me a tour of his center over there, and it's really cool to have, all the different businesses being able to, share space, share some resources, and just organically, share ideas and things like that. And so I think we just want to be careful, again, but the SWOT, just to make sure we have the right people to attend that. And because even if we do something like Artisan Bread, that's the first thing that came to my mind of people might be upset if we're just going to say, we're going to do Artisan Bread. But if we're doing something like Artisan Bread and we're bringing in the farmers and we're training people, to be able to do agribusiness type things, I think that's a good thing. So I'm really excited about having them come back, or whatever the next step is.
Yeah, just in defensive acronyms: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. SWOT. Yeah, John.
And I don't know, I may be repeating something that Heather said, but one of the things that I think is really cool that they do is they look for, when they're putting a cluster together, high capital equipment that the businesses can share. So they've got one where they've got some very fancy, computerized sewing machine that's in this fashion cluster that's, so expensive that none of those individual businesses could afford it, but they can all share it. And so it's, there's in the bread example, it's maybe they have a grain mill or something like that, or ovens, and I think that
Processing.
Yeah. So that's, just that sort of sharing and whatever is something that I think is a really powerful tool in a community.
Okay, Martha?
So do they get into retail and commercial? Because the idea isn't usually do that much.
None of their accelerators are around retail commercial.
Okay.
They're pretty much traded sectors. Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's a consensus that we want to get them, but Laura?
Yeah, I felt badly I didn't make it to the presentation, so based on what I've heard, I'd be very interested in having the presentation either here or a virtual presentation. It sounds very exciting, and I'd like to know more about it.
And maybe just for balance, I should say, no, we don't want the free presentation on a business opportunity. But, yeah, I think we
They
should.
give you cookware.
Oh, okay, I changed my
And then
mind.
you get to go on a cruise after.
Oh, thank you.
Just have to look at a condo.
Yeah, cruises right now may not be the best seller for the.
It's a thread.
So you would like to have them present to this entire body before we move forward? They cannot come to an IDA meeting because their IDA meeting is tomorrow morning. It always runs right after our meeting. So I will have to schedule a time when all of you are available.
And I will be there tomorrow. I know Vinnie and Lori quite well professionally and personally, and I can advise them that there's a very positive reception. I think from a timing perspective, their meeting isn't until 2 tomorrow, so they may be able to come to one of your
I may
meetings.
be able to convince them to be here.
We have the capability, I believe, to go online, too.
Yeah, it seemed like that presentation was, I mean, he had a well-developed slide deck and whatnot. He's probably done that in front of a camera before. I think that if people could see a video of that, that may well do what we need and then get us to the point where we could move forward with scheduling a SWOT analysis or planning one.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on staff report?
I'm going to be very short.
Martha? Martha, why don't you go ahead?
Now that we finished the energy, do you know what I'm going to ask about?
I know exactly what you're going to ask about, the housing policy. I'm going to catch my breath with my 2 new staff members at TCAD, and we've been running at about 110% for the past several weeks. I still have, let's see, just to put it into perspective, I still have 991 emails in my inbox that I have not gotten to since vacation. So I'm going to catch my breath, and I promise after a month, I'm going to say, okay, we need to start looking at this again.
Okay.
I have been working with another applicant on a case-by-case basis for a downtown project, and I think that that will inform some of what we're doing. The housing policy is very much top of mind for me. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you.
Anything else?
We're all going to be very kind, super kind to Ina. We'll be reviewing all of the project reports from all the projects. I think we have almost all of them in now, and really crunching that data so that it can all go into
That's for another 2 weeks, and then it's back to normal? Yeah.
the new normal.
Okay.
Only 105% then.
That's
Yeah.
right. All right, approval of meeting minutes, February 5th, 2020. Do I have a motion? All right, Martha moves, Mike seconds. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you, unanimous. All right. Committee minutes, Finance and Audit Committee, informational. I think you've already spoken to that, but anything to add? No?
No.
All right. Any other business to come before the IDA? Do I have a motion to adjourn? John moves, Laura seconds. All those in favor of adjourning?